Every single day, we create a crazy amount of text online. Just think about it for a second. Every tweet, every product review, every comment you drop on a YouTube video, it's this huge, chaotic ocean of words. But buried in all that mess is pure gold for businesses, for researchers, for anyone trying to understand what people are thinking. So let's dive in. How do we actually find the meaning in all that mess?
I mean, you've seen text like this, right? This is how we actually talk online. We use slang, abbreviations, hashtags, typos, the whole shebang. It's informal, it's messy, and it's totally human. But for a computer, trying to understand this is a serious headache. How do you possibly teach an algorithm that great means great, or that sucks is, not a good thing?
And then there's this, just pure gibberish. It's the digital version of static. And this kind of stuff is everywhere. Spam comments, people accidentally hitting their keyboard, you name it. For any kind of real analysis to happen, all of this noise, as analysts call it, has to be tossed out. It's junk, and it'll just mess up the data.
So, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you're staring at this digital avalanche of comments, some are insightful, some are angry, some are just nonsense. How do you even begin to turn that chaos into something useful? How do you find the important signals in all that noise? Well, believe it or not, there is a method to the madness. It's not magic. It's a really systematic process of taking all that raw, jumbled up text and actually giving it some shape, some order. It's the first and most important step before you can even think about doing any deeper analysis. Now, you'll hear a couple of terms thrown around a lot: text analysis and text analytics. They sound almost the same, but there's a really key difference. Analysis is more qualitative. It's like being a detective, digging into the what and the why. Analytics, on the other hand, is all about the numbers. It's quantitative. It answers how much and how often. What we're talking about today is the foundational work that makes both of these possible. And that foundation has an official name: textual data structuring. Honestly, you can just think of it as a super advanced form of data cleaning. It's the whole process of cleaning, processing, and organizing that raw text so it's ready for a machine or a person to actually make sense of it.
So how is this actually done? Well, analysts have a pretty powerful set of tools and techniques they use. We're going to open up that toolkit and walk through the 5 most important ones that are at the heart of pretty much any text structuring project.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with parsing and filtering, which is basically the cleanup crew. Then we'll look at how we group similar ideas together. After that, we'll get into normalization, which is all about making things consistent, then identifying what's most important, and finally, recognizing specific names and places. Let's get into it.
First up, parsing and filtering. I like to call this the sifter. The very first thing we do is something called tokenization, which just means we break a sentence down into its individual words or pieces, the tokens. Then we get rid of stop words. These are all those super common little words like the, and, is that don't really add much meaning. And finally, we do some error correction, like changing you to you, and of course throwing out that ASDFGHKL gibberish we saw earlier. Next in the toolkit is the organizer. This is all about finding patterns and creating groups. You've got association, which finds words that tend to hang out together. So you might find that people who talk about battery life also talk a lot about screen brightness. Then there's clustering, which is cool because it automatically groups similar text together even if you don't know what you're looking for. It might find hidden themes like diet and exercise in thousands of tweets about health. And finally, classification is kind of similar, but it sorts text into categories you've already defined, like news, opinion, or question. Our third technique is normalization, or as I like to call it, the standardizer. The goal here is really, really simple. Make everything consistent. In a big pile of data, you could have the same ideas expressed in dozens of different ways. Normalization is about getting all those variations to line up in a single, standard format. And that goes for the words themselves, too. And there are 2 main ways we do this with words. Stemming is kind of the brute force method. It's the chop. It just hacks off the ends of words, so hunting and hunted both become hunt. It works, but it's not very elegant. Lemmatization, on the other hand, is the scholar. It's way more sophisticated because it actually understands vocabulary to find the true root word, or the lemma. So it's smart enough to know that the root of went isn't when, it's go. All right, once our text is clean, organized, and standardized, we need to figure out what's actually important. That's where keyword identification and frequency analysis come in. This is the highlighter.
The logic here is pretty straightforward. Words that pop up over and over again are probably pretty important to what's being discussed.
And a word cloud, like this one, is the perfect way to see frequency analysis in action. It's so simple, right? The bigger the word, the more often it was used in the text. It's a fantastic way to see, just at a glance, what the main themes are in a huge amount of data. Looking here, you can immediately see that social, performance, and analysis are the big topics.
Okay, our final technique is entity recognition, which I call the labeler. This is all about pulling out specific named bits of information, like people, companies, or places, and figuring out how they're connected. So if you have the sentence, Nelson Mandela was born in South Africa, the system is smart enough to identify Nelson Mandela as a person, South Africa as a location, and even understand that the relationship between them is born in. Pretty cool, right?
So, we've gone through the whole toolkit, but theory is one thing. How does this all come together to solve a real problem? Let's check out a case study of a West African NGO that used these exact techniques to finally make sense of their YouTube comments.
So this NGO was getting hundreds and hundreds of comments, which is awesome for engagement, but they were facing some huge challenges. They were getting buried in spam and noise, they were dealing with a mix of slang and local languages, and honestly, the sheer volume of comments was just overwhelming their team. So what they do? Well, get this, they didn't need some crazy expensive supercomputer. They used Microsoft Excel. They applied these exact structuring techniques we just talked about. They filtered out the spam and sorted comments by language. They used keyword identification to spot common themes, and then frequency analysis to actually count which topics their audience cared about most.
And that's the crucial transformation. By the end of this process, that massive, messy pile of comments became a clean, well-organized dataset. The raw text was now structured data, and that made everything else possible. Understanding what people thought, figuring out what videos to make next, all of it.
It's really easy to think of this as some technical, behind-the-scenes thing that nerds worry about, but the truth is, this structuring of our words is quietly shaping our entire digital lives. It's like the invisible architecture of the internet. Seriously, think about Netflix for a second. It's not just tracking what movies you watch, it's analyzing the text from your search queries and reviews to figure out what you like. That's how it gets creepily good at recommending your next binge watch. And it's not just Netflix. Every time a brand quickly responds to your angry tweet, it's because they used these very techniques to structure and understand what you were saying first. This whole process is running constantly, all around us, analyzing the digital breadcrumbs we all leave behind. It's turning our messy, unstructured words into the clean, structured data that powers everything, from movie recommendations to the ads you see. So the next time you type a comment or search for something online, just pause and ask yourself, what is the text about me revealing?